Welcome back to the deep dive, where we sift through the sources, extract the vital knowledge, and give you the essential context you need to truly understand a subject.
Today, we are undertaking a deep dive into an American icon, Katharine Hepburn.
Mm.
And we're not just, summarizing her filmography. We're really trying to investigate the architecture of her success.
Exactly. I mean, here's a woman whose career spanned 6 decades. She moved so effortlessly between, high-flying screwball comedy and these incredibly intense literary dramas.
Hmm.
So our mission today is really to unpack the contradictions of her life. We want to understand how a performer who at one point was actively shunned by the industry, I mean, literally labeled box office poison.
A death sentence in that era.
Right. How did she manage to orchestrate one of the greatest comebacks in Hollywood history? And how was her fiercely independent image both, a natural part of her and also this brilliantly cultivated strategy?
It's that strategy part that's so fascinating. We're looking at an artist who had a remarkable level of control over her own narrative. She consistently challenged the rigid studio system, and she forced the industry to accept her on her own terms.
Even when those terms were highly inconvenient for them.
Oh, incredibly inconvenient and controversial, and often just the complete opposite of what the public thought they wanted. She wasn't just talented. She was, I think, an unparalleled professional strategist.
Okay, so let's unpack this. How did this person who, refused to sign autographs, famously wore trousers everywhere, got nicknamed Catherine of Arrogance, how did she end up defining the modern woman for the entire 20th century?
Well, to answer that, you have to start at the beginning, and that beginning is way outside the Hollywood bubble. It's in Connecticut.
Right, with your family.
You really want to understand Katharine Hepburn, you have to start with the sheer radicalism of her upbringing. She was born May 12, 1907, in Hartford, Connecticut, into a household that was, by the standards of the time, just a crucible of progressive social reform.
And her parents weren't just, casual liberals. They were expert activists. Their home was basically the ideological headquarters for their campaigns.
And these are deeply controversial campaigns at the time.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, look at her father, Thomas Hepburn. He was a prominent urologist, and he co-founded the New England Social Hygiene Association.
Which sounds very polite, but what it actually meant was...
It meant he was educating the public about venereal disease. In the 1910s, this was a topic that was completely unmentionable in polite society. His work took immense courage.
And her mother was, if anything, even more radical in the public eye.
Totally. Catherine Martha Houghton Hepburn, her mother, was a tireless feminist campaigner. She headed the Connecticut Women's Suffrage Association, putting her right on the front lines of that battle.
But also, crucially, she campaigned for birth control right alongside Margaret Sanger.
Exactly. And Margaret Sanger was an absolutely incendiary figure to many conservative groups at the time. So this wasn't some abstract thing for young Catherine. She was immersed in it. The sources confirm she actually joined her mother on Votes for Women demonstrations.
Oh.
Just try to imagine being a child growing up with a mother who was publicly debating, challenging authority, facing down moral outrage pretty much every single day.
That kind of environment would instill a profound family ethos, wouldn't it? The kids weren't just raised to be independent thinkers. They were trained to exercise absolute freedom of speech.
They were expected to question everything, to debate any topic, no matter how sacred. If you're trained from birth to defend your position against seasoned activists like your own parents, well, you develop a pretty formidable intellectual armor.
She called it enormously lucky.
And you can see why. It didn't just give her confidence. It gave her this framework that was totally different from the typical Hollywood starlet she was later expected to be.
So when the studio tried to tell her how to dress or what to say...
She saw it as an infringement on her rights, a concept her parents had spent their entire lives fighting for.
But this intellectual side was matched by an equally intense physical discipline, and that came mostly from her father.
That's right. The young Hepburn was a self-proclaimed tomboy. She kept her hair short, often insisted on being called Jimmy, and this was all encouraged. Her father believed that the children had to use their minds and their bodies to the limit.
And this wasn't just like playing outside, it was competitive, disciplined athleticism.
Oh, for sure. He taught them to swim, run, dive, wrestle, and to master sports like tennis and golf. She got genuinely good at golf, even reaching the semifinal of the Connecticut Young Women's Golf Championship.
That level of focus training is exactly what she brought to her acting later on.
It is. And it extended to her daily routine. The sources all point to these almost ascetic health habits, like taking ice-cold baths every morning.
Why?
It wasn't about enjoyment. It was about self-mastery. She had this belief, and I'm quoting her here, the bitterer the medicine, the better it was for you.
That one phrase just defines her entire professional philosophy, doesn't it?
It really does. She sought out difficulty, believing that hardship was essential for growth.
But this whole narrative of strength and enlightenment and discipline, it gets severely tested by an immense trauma that hit the family when she was just 13.
In March 1921, Katharine experienced something that just permanently altered her. She discovered the body of her older brother Tom, who was 15. He had died from an apparent suicide by hanging.
And the way the family handled this is so crucial to understanding her later on, especially her emotional guardedness.
It is. The Hepburn family maintained a lifelong public and private denial. They insisted it was some kind of experiment gone wrong, rather than acknowledging it was a suicide.
Which is, well, that's a psychologically significant detail, isn't it? The need to suppress a horrific truth and replace it with a controlled narrative.
It seems to have directly translated into Katharine's adult need to control her own public image and just keep everyone at an emotional distance.
The immediate impact was devastating. The sources say the incident made the teenage Hepburn nervous, moody, and deeply suspicious. This fearless, outspoken kid suddenly just retreated.
Yeah, she dropped out of her school, the Oxford School, and she needed several years of private tutoring. Her discipline, which had been a tool for achievement, now became, a defense mechanism.
And that guardedness became a core part of her identity. I mean, it's so telling that she adopted Tom's birthday, November 8th, as her own for many, many years.
She only revealed her true birth date decades later in her 1991 autobiography. She literally merged her identity with her lost brother. It's a powerful, lifelong effort to manage her own story, which is exactly the skills she would use in Hollywood.
So she emerges from this period disciplined but deeply guarded, and her next step is college, which she didn't seem too excited about.
No, not at all. She went to Bryn Mawr College mostly to please her mother. She got a degree in history and philosophy, but found the whole scholastic environment pretty unfulfilling. She struggled at first, was even suspended once for smoking in her room.
But then she figured out how to leverage the system.
She did. She realized that roles in the college plays, which she desperately wanted, were conditional on having good grades.
A little motivation.
A lot of motivation. Once her marks improved, she was performing regularly. She starred in the senior play, The Woman in the Moon, and that experience, that immediate validation from an audience, that's what cemented her ambition.
So once she graduated, she just went for it.
With that same fanatical focus, she applied to everything else. She was determined, and she got hired pretty quickly in repertory theater. But the move from college plays to the professional world was, well, it was brutal.
She had the confidence, but not the technique.
Not at all. She faced immediate, harsh criticism. She landed a starring role in The Big Pond and was fired after only 4 weeks. Directors complained about her shrill voice, her tendency to mix up lines, speaking way too quickly.
She was just not very good yet.
To be blunt, no. And that led to this painful cycle of hiring and firing. She was fired from Death, Takes a Holiday. Later, the star Leslie Howard had her fired from The Animal Kingdom because he just disliked her and found her difficult.
It's amazing to think about this fearless, privileged young woman facing that much rejection. The playwright Philip Barry told her, to be brutally frank, you weren't very good.
And that's a brutal thing to hear. But those failures forced her to analyze her weaknesses and refine her craft. It's the classic Hepburn response to a problem.
And her breakthrough finally came in 1932 on Broadway.
Yes, in a play called The Warrior's Husband.
This was the role that clicked, and it was all because of that physical discipline her father instilled in her. The role required aggressive energy and athleticism. She had to leap down a steep staircase carrying a stag over her shoulder.
In a short silver tunic, no less. She was literally leaping into the spotlight. Her energy just captivated the critics. The show ran for 3 months, and that unique physical performance is what finally caught Hollywood's attention.
A scout for agent Leland Hayward saw her and immediately set up a screen test for the RKO film A Bill of Divorcement.
And the director, George Cukor, who had become a lifelong friend, was impressed. He called her an odd creature, but he loved the way she just picked up a glass. Some tiny gesture that told him she was a star.
But here's the critical business move. Despite being a complete unknown in Hollywood, she showed immediate savvy. She demanded a huge salary.
An unusually high salary, yeah.
Yeah.
$1,500 a week on a temporary contract. She insisted on being treated like a star before she'd proven she was one.
And RKO agreed. The gamble paid off instantly. The film was a success, critics hailed her performance, and she was signed to a long-term contract.
The ascent was just meteoric. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her third film, Morning Glory, a role she had insisted on getting after seeing the script.
And in classic Hepburn fashion, showing her complete disdain for the Hollywood machine, she didn't even show up to the ceremony.
Never did.
Then her next film, Little Women, was one of the biggest hits the industry had seen. She played Jo and always said it was one of her favorite roles. She felt nobody could be as good in that part as she was.
That confidence was just unshakable at this point. But that peak led almost immediately into a severe, severe trough. This is the infamous box office poison era, from 34 to 38.
And the transition from Golden Girl to Public Enemy was shockingly fast.
It started with a catastrophic return to Broadway in 1933 with a play called The Lake. The director was terrible, the script wasn't right for her, and that is where we get maybe the most famous, devastating line of theatrical criticism in history.
Dorothy Parker.
Dorothy Parker's immortal quip. She runs the gamut of emotions all the way from A to B.
Ouch. That didn't just hurt her, it destroyed the show's run.
Sales plummeted. But instead of just letting it die a slow death, Hepburn took control. She paid the director, Jed Harris, $14,000, most of her life savings, to close the production immediately.
She paid him.
She paid him. That financial sacrifice taught her a permanent lesson. If something is hurting your career, you have to take dramatic, costly action to regain control.
And meanwhile, her films were failing, one after another. The Little Minister, Mary of Scotland, audiences were just rejecting her.
And this all culminated with Bringing Up Baby in 1938 with Cary Grant. Today, it's seen as an absolute masterpiece, right? A screwball classic.
A total classic.
But commercially, it was a flop. And the theater owners, they blamed Hepburn. They claimed her presence was alienating audiences.
And that's when they made it official. The Independent Theater Owners of America publicly listed her as box office poison.
It wasn't just a bad review. It was a powerful industrial statement. They were essentially saying, don't hire this woman.
So why? Why the fierce public rejection? It wasn't about talent.
No, the sources are really clear on this. It was a profound image clash. She just refused to conform. She was openly rude to the press. She wouldn't sign autographs. She got that nickname, Katharine of Arrogance. She baffled the public with her, boyish behavior and wearing trousers.
She was too modern for the 1930s.
Way too modern, too intellectual, too aggressive. And the studio, RKO, they tried to force her into this truly terrible B-movie, Mother Carey's Chickens. But Hepburn, having learned her lesson from The Lake, made a decisive revolutionary move.
She refused.
She refused the film and paid RKO $75,000 to buy out her own contract.
You cannot overstate how radical that was in 1938. The studio system relied on locking actors into these long contracts where they basically owned you.
They owned your image, your roles, everything. For an actor to proactively pay to get out and become an independent agent, it was almost unheard of. It took immense wealth, which she had from her early success, and just ironclad conviction.
She chose freedom over stability. And that decision wasn't just an escape. It was the foundation of this genius, masterminded comeback.
She knew she needed a vehicle perfectly tailored to her unique personality, and she found it.
The Philadelphia Story?
The play by Philip Barry. The role of Tracy Lord was written specifically to accommodate all of Hepburn's contradictions, her humor, her aggression, her high-class background, and her vulnerability. It was the only way the public would accept her again.
And the financial maneuvering was brilliant. Her partner at the time, Howard Hughes, bought her the film rights to the play before it even debuted on Broadway.
Which gave her total control, a massive asset.
The play was a phenomenal success on Broadway, running for over 400 performances. That restored her reputation, but the film deal she struck with MGM, that was the strategic masterpiece.
She sold the rights to MGM on two conditions. She would be the star, and she would pick her director and her co-stars.
George Cukor, Cary Grant, and James Stewart. Not a bad team.
Not bad at all. And she even insisted on a key piece of image rehabilitation in the film's opening scene.
Right. She wanted Grant to knock her flat on her backside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She said moviegoers thought she was too la-di-da, too cold. She needed the audience to laugh at her enough that they would ultimately sympathize with her. It was this moment of intentional public humiliation designed to make the intimidating Katharine Hepburn relatable.
And my God, did it work. The Philadelphia Story was one of the biggest hits of 1940. Time magazine declared, "Come on back, Katie, all is forgiven." She earned her third Oscar nomination and reestablished herself as a major star, all completely on her own terms.
And her next huge strategic move came with Woman of the Year in 1942,
Oh,
which led directly to the most consequential relationship of her entire life.
Spencer Tracy?
Spencer Tracy. They met on that set, and their very first exchange just perfectly captured their dynamic.
The story goes she said something like, "I'm afraid I'm too tall for you."
And he replied, "Don't worry, Miss Hepburn, I'll soon cut you down to my size." And that spark ignited this relationship that was both a professional blessing and a huge private demand, spanning 9 films together. Woman of the Year was another massive hit, and it led to her signing a new star contract with MGM.
And it's crucial to point out, she later admitted this partnership significantly advanced her career. Tracy was the more popular star at the time. She benefited from being tied to his bankability.
She did. But this partnership came with profound demands, the first one being absolute secrecy.
Right, because Tracy was married, and his wife, Louise, would never agree to a divorce.
So this was a hidden relationship that lasted until his death in 1967. They maintained separate residences. They were meticulous about never being seen together publicly. This was a major, long-term commitment that demanded constant vigilance.
And the demands went beyond secrecy, didn't they? She really put her career on the back burner for him at times.
She did. It's a huge contradiction with her public image. She slowed her career in the 40s to support Tracy, who was suffering from severe alcoholism, moodiness, and insomnia.
The sources say she devoted herself to making his life easier. She took on this mothering role, often obeying him. It's fascinating. The woman who fought the entire studio system was privately submissive to the man she loved.
And this professional slowdown was compounded by politics. In the late 40s, with the anti-communist hysteria, Hepburn's outspoken opposition to the movement led directly to a 9-month period where she couldn't find work.
She was labeled dangerously progressive.
Even though she denied ever being a communist sympathizer. But still, their on-screen partnership powered through. They finished the decade with Adam's Rib in 1949, a brilliant battle of the sexes comedy written specifically for them.
Which became one of their most profitable films together.
The 1950s then marked a pivotal shift in her career. She was nearing her 50s, and she started consciously seeking out really difficult, dramatic material to prove her artistic merit beyond just the Tracy Hepburn formula.
She was building a serious legacy. Her first move was back to the stage, tackling Shakespeare in As You Like It.
A deliberate artistic risk. She was operating under her personal mantra. It's better to try something difficult and flop than to play it safe all the time.
The play did well financially, but her next film was a massive global success, and this time it was entirely without Tracy.
The African Queen in 1951 opposite Humphrey Bogart. And that film was a true test of endurance. It was her first in Technicolor, filmed mostly on location in the Belgian Congo.
She embraced the conditions, though, didn't she? The heat, the insects, even getting dysentery. It was like proof of her toughness linking back to her childhood.
It was, and the film reestablished her as a major box office draw, independent of Tracy, and got her a 5th Oscar nomination.
Through the mid-50s, she successfully carved out this really specific niche. She started playing what she called the maiden aunt, these mature, unmarried, intellectually sharp women.
Like Rosie Sayre in The African Queen or Jane Hudson in Summertime. Her performance in Summertime got her another Oscar nomination, even though she got a chronic eye infection from doing a stunt fall into a canal in Venice.
Even in her 50s, she's still doing her own stunts.
Embracing the discomfort. And that desire for challenging roles led her to a really dark, intense period, culminating in Suddenly, last summer in 1959. She took on the role of the creepy, controlling antagonist, Aunt Violet Venable.
Which was completely against type for her.
Totally. And the filming was an absolute ordeal. She had terrible clashes with the director, Joseph L. Mankiewicz. The tension got so bad that, famously, it ended with Hepburn actually spitting at him.
She did what?
And she spat at him in frustration. And yet, that fraught performance earned her an 8th Oscar nomination.
But the film she considered her best work was Long Day's Journey into Night.
Without a doubt. The 1962 adaptation of Eugene O'Neill's masterpiece. She called the role of the morphine-addicted Mary Tyrone the most challenging female role in American drama, and believed it was the single best performance of her career.
It got her another Oscar nomination and the Best Actress award at Cannes. But right after this artistic high point, she made a monumental sacrifice.
A complete 5-year hiatus from all professional work. She stopped everything to care for the ailing Spencer Tracy. This period is the deepest contrast between her public image of iron independence and her private devotion.
And her return to cinema after that break? It began the spectacular, record-breaking final phase of her career.
She returned for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner in 1967, her final film with Tracy, who tragically died just 17 days after filming wrapped.
The film was a massive success, and it won Hepburn her second Academy Award for Best Actress, 34 years after her first. She felt it was an honor for Tracy as much as for her.
And she didn't pause. She went immediately back to work playing Eleanor of Aquitaine in The Lion in Winter.
And that performance won her third Academy Award the very next year, a rare tie with Barbra Streisand. 2 consecutive Oscars after once being labeled poison. That's just incredible resilience.
She even conquered Broadway one last time in the musical Coco. Admitted she wasn't a strong singer, but just compensated with pure guts and star power.
Her crowning cinematic achievement, though, came late in life with On Golden Pond in 1981 with Henry Fonda.
A colossal success. At 74, she was still demonstrating that vitality, doing a stunt where she dives fully clothed into a lake. And that film secured her record 4th Academy Award, a record that still stands.
It's just an incredible career arc. But for a star who commanded so much public attention, she was fiercely, almost violently private. This is where the nickname Katharine of Arrogance comes from, isn't it?
It is. She refused interviews and autographs for most of her career. She'd literally wrestle cameras away from photographers. Her idea of stardom demanded distance, not accessibility.
Her personal life reflected that. She was only married once, very briefly, to Ludlow Ogden Smith.
And the anecdote about the name is so telling. He actually changed his name to S. Ogden Ludlow at her request because she didn't want to be known as Kate Smith, a name she found too plain.
She later admitted she was a terrible pig for prioritizing her career entirely over her marriage. It shows that total uncompromising focus.
And after her divorce, she had relationships, notably with Howard Hughes, who desperately wanted to marry her. But she refused because she was laser-focused on engineering her career comeback. No personal commitment could supersede her professional ambition.
And she made another radical choice for that era. She decided not to have children.
A conscious and unflinching choice. She believed motherhood required a full-time commitment she was unwilling to make, calling herself a very selfish human being. And she didn't mean it as a negative, but as an explanation for her singular devotion to her art.
You have to put yourself in that era. For a woman to make that choice and state it so plainly was huge.
It was. And that intense focus is what allowed her to manage the impossibly complex dynamic of the Spencer Tracy relationship.
The depth of her feeling for him is clear. She wrote, "It was a unique feeling that I had for him. I would have done anything for him."
That was the private woman, hidden behind those walls of independence. The devotion, especially during his final years when she quit her career to care for him, it's the ultimate measure of their bond.
And after he died, out of consideration for his family, she didn't even attend his funeral.
And she stayed publicly silent about their 27-year relationship for decades. She only spoke about it after Tracy's wife, Louise, died in 1983. This level of self-contained grief and respect, it speaks to a private morality that few in Hollywood could match.
Her personal beliefs were just as defiant. She called herself a dedicated Democrat, openly promoted birth control, her mother's cause, and supported the right to abortion. On religion, she was blunt. I'm an atheist, and that's it.
And this nonconformity translated powerfully into her fashion legacy. By defiantly wearing slacks and sandals everywhere, she helped redefine modern female fashion.
She just said she disliked the stocking situation, but it was more than that, wasn't it? By refusing to conform to the confining expectations of female dress, she helped normalize trousers for women. She made them a symbol of functional, comfortable, intellectual female power.
And the Council of Fashion Designers of America eventually gave her a Lifetime Achievement Award for it. Her personal comfort became a massive cultural statement.
So her legacy is just immense. The American Film Institute named her the greatest female star of classic Hollywood cinema.
And her strong, unconventional characters and lifestyle cemented her as an icon of the emancipated woman, influencing gender attitudes for the entire century.
But there's a contradiction there, isn't there? A critic, Richard Schickel, noted that her typical beloved screen role-like in the Philadelphia Story or Woman of the Year was usually a high-class or stuck-up girl who is brought down to earth by an earthy type.
Yes. In other words, her intimidating high-status persona almost always had to be softened or humbled by a more conventional male lead, usually Tracy, before mass audiences could fully embrace her.
So Hollywood was packaging her independence, making it palatable for the mainstream.
You could say that. They made sure the strong female was ultimately, as Schickel put it, restored to a safe position within the status quo. But the core of that independence was still very, very real.
And despite that compromise, she remains one of the most distinctive voices in film history. That precise, clipped, patrician accent became inseparable from her persona.
Her final years saw her shift to television, where critics said she was essentially playing a fictionalized, feisty version of herself. Her last theatrically released film was Love Affair in 1994, when she was 87.
And though she looked frail, they said her magnificent spirit was still present.
By the 80s, she developed that noticeable tremor, a permanently shaking head, and toward the end showed signs of dementia. She died from cardiac arrest on June 29, 2003 at 96 in her beloved family home in Connecticut.
The tributes were widespread. President George W. Bush called her one of the nation's artistic treasures. Broadway lights were dimmed. Her legacy is preserved in memorials all over.
So looking back at this deep dive, Katharine Hepburn's career is just a masterclass in professional resilience and strategic self-creation.
A meteoric rise, a staggering public rejection, and then an engineered comeback that demanded complete creative control. She leveraged that long, complicated partnership with Tracy and evolved into this beloved independent star.
And what we learn is that her independence wasn't accidental. It was forged by her radical upbringing, polished by brutal setbacks, and strategically financed by brilliant business moves. Her life was defined by iron discipline and the fierce defense of her personal style.
She was the embodiment of a woman pushing boundaries, refusing to be categorized. And yet, here's the provocative thought for you to consider as we wrap up. Hepburn, a star who won a record 4 Oscars playing strong, complex women, famously believed that women cannot have it all, meaning a family and a truly demanding career.
She made that choice. She sacrificed marriage and motherhood for her ambition and her devotion to Tracy.
So what does her success, built on that very explicit belief in necessary sacrifice, tell us about the pressures and choices faced by modern, ambitious individuals today? Is her triumph a celebration of boundless independence, or is it a cautionary tale about the necessity of profound sacrifice?
That is the fittingly difficult question she leaves us with. A final reflection from a woman whose life was defined by uncompromising choices.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary life of Katharine Hepburn. We'll see you next time.